KFGM Ballroom sessions are made possible by generous donations from individuals, businesses, and organizations in our community. If you would like to be involved in supporting local music by donating to this program, please visit 1055kfgm.org, click the Donate Today button, and add a note saying that you'd like to support KFGM Ballroom sessions. Located in Missoula, Montana, Rattlesnake Cable Company makes high-quality guitar cables, microphone cables, low-profile patch cables for your pedal board, line buffers, and more. As musicians, we will spend all the rent on instruments and amps and microphones, often overlooking the importance of good cables to let those instruments shine through. These US-made oxygen-free bare copper cables preserve the high end of your signal, and heavy shielding ensures they are quiet and durable for years of use. Learn more at www.rattlesnakecables.com. Back to the Mother Kombucha is a locally produced party for your taste buds. You can find Back to the Mother Kombucha in stores all over the Five Valleys. Back to the Mother's mission is to seek out every alternative in sustainable practices to show how we, the people of this planet, the stewards of the earth, can live abundant, healthy lives in a manner that sustains the earth for generations to come. We may not know exactly what that looks like, but we are here to start the conversation. We are changing the dialogue about how ordinary people can change the world. Like their Facebook page to keep up with updates and events, and find out more at www.backtothemother.earth.
Another broken line, 'cause in reality, to hold a hollow sign, we are a part of every day, to break away, we pull you back in. Time will tell you what you're made of. Come on, you liars, so stealers and fires, your heart and we want you. The faces who rule us all, and no one will save you. No right before the faces who rule us all. We love our heresy, we love our broken mind, telling you to change, we keep you high and dry. You are who you are, afraid of everything, you swallow it. Time will show you what you can't bear. Come on, you liars, so stealers and fires, your heart and we want you. The faces who rule us losing sleep. The happy hearts will fly and get there ever after. Eventually it'll fall down. Come on now, take it as you will. The fight is on the floor. I've gone so many times, I don't know what it does anymore. She's losing face another time.
You're listening to KFGM Ballroom Sessions. I am Hiram Mariner, a.k.a. The Agreeable Bassist. Catch me live on 105.5 KFGM every Tuesday evening from 6 to 8 Mountain Standard Time, streaming at 1055kfgm.org, and on stage around Missoula with my band Jupiter Beat. Recently, I had the honor of sharing the stage with the masters of melodic metal, Fate's Fortune, and said fortune has shined on me once more because I'm proudly sitting in on this week's KFGM Ballroom Sessions with Missoula staple Brad Craig and Josh Rhines on guitar, Dan Molgard on bass, Brooke Bigley on vocals, and Joshua Chai on drums of Fate's Fortune. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hey,
Hi there.
Thanks for having us.
Hey-o.
Oh, man, it's our pleasure. First off, you guys are great. Your sound, your tone, your timing is very impressive, capped with hauntingly beautiful vocals.
Oh, thanks.
I'm a big fan and want to thank you all for putting together such great songs and such a great stage presence.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
It is my pleasure. So we're going to come into the obligatory questions, and I'm going to let Brad start that off.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, I know you guys have had various band names over the last few years, and how long have you been Fate's Fortune?
We started Fate's Fortune in the end of January this year.
All right. And before that, you were the Ghost Peppers, correct?
Yes, technically a different band, but some of the same members.
Do you play any of the same songs as in Ghost Peppers? Or are they all new?
We brought over one or two that fit the new sound, but for the most part, we've been writing a ton of songs. This last 6 months, we've probably written 35, 40 instrumentals.
Wow. So
That's
you
impressive.
and Dan have been playing together a long time, am I right?
We actually went to high school together back in the day, and we've been playing music on and off for the better part of 12 years or so.
Yeah, something like that.
Cool. And Brooke, did you used to play with these guys back in the day as well?
Yeah, back in the day, we were in High Voltage together.
Right.
Yeah.
How long ago was that?
Gosh, what was that like?
That was 8 years.
8? Yeah.
Yeah, what was it? Like middle part of 2010.
Yeah. We did a lot of gigs. We had a great time.
And what brought you back now?
Fate. I think just life. Yeah, it was the right timing. I had kind of tried to start a bunch of other projects, and I, went back to school and blah, blah, blah. And then life just kind of opened up, and Josh was like, hey, we're starting a new project. And I was like, yes.
Right on.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
I think that's
Very
one
cool.
of the. I think that's one of the most enjoyable parts of the band so far is just each of us having kind of broken off and done our respective things and kind of ending up in Missoula and then ending up wanting to craft the sound that we currently have. So
Yeah.
it's just nice serendipity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where are you guys from originally, each one of you?
I grew up in a very, very tiny town called Joliet, Montana, over by Red Lodge. And then I moved to California right after high school, and then made my way to Missoula.
Yeah, and I was born in San Diego, but I moved when I was little to Wichita, Kansas. Grew up there, and then moved to Missoula in 2006. Finished off high school and college, and yeah, now I'm here working in my career and playing.
I grew up in Missoula most of my life. Born in California. I lived in Hawaii for a little bit, but for the majority, I've been in Missoula.
I'm also born and raised Missoulian.
All right. Very nice. I've noticed in Missoula, so many people have come here from somewhere. And so it's sort of refreshing to see. I see about half and half. So that's pretty good. Excellent. I want to ask what brought you guys to your respective instruments. So why are you a vocalist, and why are you a bass player, percussionist, guitar player, and so forth?
That's a great question. I knew I was gonna be a singer since I was a kid. I'd say I was 6, and I had a moment where I was like, "Yep, this is what I'm supposed to do." And then I was in choir, theater, all that kind of stuff for as long as I can remember. I went to music school in in Los Angeles, studied vocal performance, and lived there and tried to do that thing that way. I grew up singing classical music, but I was in my first band when I was 16, and we did classic rock covers, and I was immediately like, this is what I'm supposed to do. So I've always tried to find a way to do that. Hasn't always been easy, but I've gone to school for music. When I moved to Missoula, I studied in the classical vocal program, burnt out pretty hardcore because it's really intense. And then, I've just been in a variety of projects, but I've always been singing in one way or another. I've tried to do as many different styles as possible because I really want to be a versatile vocalist. But this is my favorite kind of music to do. It's a huge part of who I am, and I feel like I get to be my real self and really emote and write in a really authentic way.
Very nice.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'd say for me, it's a lot more of a recent development. I'd say that I grew up with my parents listening to the Grateful Dead and a handful of similar rock groups from the 60s and 70s, and I didn't really have a great perspective on instrumentals and music. And then when I was really young, I started getting into heavy metal, kind of branching out on my own. And so I think I got my first guitar when I was 15 after I made a deal with my parents that if I repainted a couple of rooms in our old house, they'd buy me a guitar. So then that was before I moved to Missoula. Then when I moved to Missoula, I got into a band with a handful of my buddies called Red 40. And I played guitar for our first couple of shows. But I'd like to say that after a couple of shows and a couple of practices, I think my bandmates, in the nicest way possible, said, hey, I think we know somebody else who might play guitar a little bit better, and we noticed that you have appreciable chops on bass. Do you want to try that? And so I was just like, sure. So I borrowed one of our guitarist brothers' basses for a couple of months, kind of built up some chops, and honestly, the rest is history.
So you upgraded to bass.
I would absolutely
Yeah.
say so. Absolutely.
Excellent.
Everybody wants to be a drummer.
I do.
Even guitar players and singers and bass players want to be drummers.
Everybody sits on it in practice.
Right.
Whenever you have a break.
Exactly. But for me, I know my mom told me when she was pregnant with me, she used to go to church, and I would just freak out inside her tummy whenever there was music. And she said that was the case universally. So kind of always knew I was going to be into music. My sister played the piano, but I thought I was going to be a guitar player. So I have a distinct memory of air guitar in the mirror with a ukulele, and I was like, oh yeah, like I'm going to be the next Jimi Hendrix. And then I went to big dreams, but I went to a festival at the Gorge, and I remember hearing drums and feeling the drums more than anything. Feeling like the sonic impact and the timbre of the drums hit me in the chest. I was like, that's what I want to do. Just something about the vibration and the power that comes from the instrument just really, since then, has always fascinated me. Particularly like when you hit a drum and you watch the head vibrate and the sound come off of it. I just think it's the coolest thing. So I was super drawn to that and started playing in jazz band and all kinds of band and just kind of went from there. So that's how I became a drummer.
I knew I wanted to play guitar when I heard Led Zeppelin 1. You know, that album changed everything for me. Before that, I was listening to whatever was on at the time, the Linkin Park, Metallica, Limp Bizkit, all of those semi-respectable, semi-terrible bands.
It's all about the Nookie.
Just joking about that. But seriously, when I heard that album, I knew that the guitar, I wanted to be able to create sounds like that. I wanted to write music like that. So I delved in head first. I got a guitar. I started playing 5 or 6 hours a day. I started actually my first band before I could really play a chord. So I jumped in and started getting into everything. From there, I went to Deep Purple, Rainbow, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Metallica. That type of stuff really influenced me. I love the tonality of the guitar, the effects that you can put on an electric guitar, just the saturation you get from an overdriven guitar, just the whole tonality and sound to me is the holy grail of what I like in music. I like how expressive it is. I like how intense it is. I like how pretty acoustic guitar is. It just speaks to me personally.
Very nice.
Well, I noticed you don't have an amp today, Josh. Neither do you, Dan. Guys have switched over to those Kempers.
Yeah,
right?
we're cheating a little bit by bringing the guitar profilers into here.
Well, how are they working out?
They're sounding great. A guitar profiler is essentially studio-created sounds from actual guitar heads, whether it be Marshall, Mesa, Diesel, Aguilar, this or that. It's just in a handy-dandy, small foot by 8-inch box. Mm-hmm. Makes it nice for recording, for traveling, because it's really light. You're getting great tones. The competitor to them is Axe Effects. There's a lot of people using those today too. I feel we're at a certain point in history where the technology has caught up where you can make amazing tones by going direct in. And I mean, this is coming from a diehard tube amp fan. I mean, I've been playing loud Marshalls since I could talk, basically. But the tone's great, portability's great, the programming, the guts, it just makes everything so nice. You can literally record with a certain tone and bring that exact tone to the stage. Dan and I have been doing a lot of recording these last couple months with the Kemper, and it's really expanded our sonic palette. I can let him talk a little bit about our bass recordings.
Sure, yeah, and just to kind of follow up on that point, Josh, I think consistency is something that I've always had a challenge with. A bass amp. At the end of the day, I've used a lot of hybrid setups before, like a tube-driven preamp and a solid-state power amp, something like that. And sometimes consistency, like based on the weather and based on the temperature of the internal electronics, can really put big variances on the tone. So probably the nicest thing about having the Kemper is, like Josh was saying, rolling up into a gig or into practice or really any sort of medium of performance and having a really consistent tone. I would say that what we've been doing a lot on the bass, and I'll speak a little bit to my kind of bass tone philosophy. I think that in a lot of modern rock and in classic rock especially, the bass really acts as a necessary sonic glue between the pure rhythm section like the drums and then let's say the pure melodic section like lead guitar. And I think that there's a lot of nuance to bass tone, especially in the low mids, that a lot of music doesn't capture in a novel way. And I think that's one of the big things that I've tried. So I've used a lot of kind of boutique pedals, and I have a kind of boutique bass with a certain sort of active setup that really gives a lot of presence in that sonic range. And so what Josh and I have been doing in the studio is trying to capture what's best in the I would say in the space of the models, what best we can get from that, what best we can get from the onboard EQ, from the bass, but then also dialing it around to do some stuff that maybe people haven't really heard before, and especially with our type of music. So whether it's a kind of a synth channel that we set up with a lot of mids and maybe a lot of treble and not a ton of low end, but then running a clean channel at the same time to get that kind of girth from the bottom. I think that's a really new approach that I'm familiar with from a recording perspective, but I'm really enjoying the tones that we're able to get, and especially that most important part, the consistency.
Do you think the tone is from your modeler more than it is from your bass itself?
I think that both of them have their own extremely pronounced native characteristics. I would say that the bass is probably really good with kind of EQ variants on the high end, and I'd say that the profiler is probably better for like the ultra high end, that kind of presence, and also for the low end and kind of deriving, I'd say, the headroom in the low range. And so I think that's really where the Kemper excels. It's got a really nice power amp, and I typically use a 2x12 cab for my live setup, just because I think it's voiced really well for the low end. But I don't know if it's half and half. I don't know if it's 80-20, 60-40, anything like that. But I'd say that the combo and whatever tones we end up with, definitely let them both shine.
To follow up on that, when I'm using the Kemper to record and I switch guitars, I notice a noticeable variant in sound. But I'd probably say it's 70% amp, 30 guitar, and I would say just from the recording perspective to the bass as well.
All right.
One thing we've been doing while writing music, and this is kind of peering off a little bit, but we've been using extended range guitars. Our main songs are on a 7-string guitar and a 5-string bass. We tune typically half step down on all our strings. Sometimes we go into drop A flat, which is essentially drop D, just down a string. And we've also been dabbling a little bit in 8-string guitars and equivalently tuned bass guitar. We've been exploring these different sonic territories, which are typically reserved for fairly brutal types of metal, like a very intense, like djenty or grindcore, this and that. Whereas we're trying to play more melodic rock metal. We found that labels are hard, and some people think Ozzy Osbourne is metal, and some people think Cannibal Corpse is metal. So we just tell people we're a rock metal band, and they can decide what we sound like. But we're more influenced by bands like Iron Maiden than we would be Meshuggah. And these extended range instruments have given us a little fresh perspective on these different types of galloping rhythms and this and that. And it's fun playing on a bit lower pitched instrument because it's a different form of expression. You play a little differently, and it offers some challenges. I was used to playing a 6-string guitar the majority of my career, and suddenly I have a low B down there, or in the case of the 8-string, a low F. So you got to kind of reposition all your fingers, and you got to know mentally, okay, if I need to go to the A string, I need to jump up to the 4th string up rather than just the 2nd one. And that kind of stuff, it can mess with you a little bit when you're so comfortable in your own playing.
How long have you been playing these extended range guitars then?
Actually, I got my first 7-string in January of this year. End of last year, Dan came to me and told me about how he really wanted to play some more down-tuned music. Not that he wanted to be the brutal music, but he thought it'd be really cool if hey, let's extend our range, let's try this different register stuff. So I got the guitar. I kind of fell in love with all the different range. There's a couple schools of thought. Some people take a 6-string guitar and tune it down to B standard or equivalent, B flat standard or whatever they do. Whereas the 7-string, it adds all that lower range, but you keep your upper register. So for lead work, you keep your familiar frets, you have 0 through 24 that are in a familiar tuning. Whereas the people that tune down the 6-string, they lose those 5 notes on the top end. And
Yeah.
I personally love those notes because I love a high squealing note at the end of a solo, and I would miss that too much.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, it's not. It's kind of a weird up and down story as far as my exposure to extended range instruments. So I first bought like a 7-string Ibanez from a pawn shop, maybe within the first year of moving to Missoula, and yeah, not very good tone. I wasn't particularly good at it, but I wanted to try my hand at playing some Dream Theater riffs. So why not? I think I got rid of that maybe within a year, and then I had also played on kind of a discount 5-string bass for a while and didn't really appreciate what that lower register was for. But then after playing on exclusively a 4-string for maybe 6 or 7 years, moved over to the 5-string Dingwall that I have now. And then I also have a Warwick Corvette that's also a 5-string, and that's what we use for that F standard tuning.
You had mentioned Iron Maiden, Little Zeppelin. You know, I hear certain things out of your music. You know, your tapping when you play the guitar, kind of your speed picking when you do decide to do that. So what would you say are some musical influences and inspiration? And one has to be Nightwish. Am I right or am I wrong?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I got into Nightwish a few years ago, and I was like, oh, I didn't even know you could do that. I didn't know that existed. I think Ann Wilson from Heart has been a huge influence for me. Of course, Robert Plant. Zeppelin changed my life as well. But a lot of those, you know, classic rock vocalists, Steve Perry, with just really soaring vocals. It's shown me what's possible. And you know, I feel like I have a lot of my influences are male, which is odd. And so I've started to listen to more female, you know, hard rock vocalists like Lizzie Hale. I love her. She's, you know, newer. I just try to use my entire range and find vocalists that do the same.
Yeah, I think for me, like I was saying, I kind of broke off from listening to the Mamas and the Papas and the Grateful Dead with my parents in the car, and really found my own taste in music maybe when I was 10 or something like that. And the first CD I ever bought was the Black Album by Metallica. And it really kind of, the rest is history. It's honestly the genre of music that I listen to the most now. And I do listen to a lot of Metallica. I listen to a lot of Megadeth. And maybe this is funny to say, but from a bassist perspective, I think Dave Ellefson from Megadeth is, watching him play in videos and play these giant shows with a pick, I think was maybe the first time that I started to not feel a little awkward using a pick. Because if you're ever looking at the comments on YouTube and you watch a video of somebody playing bass with a pick, you know, you've got a million people who are just like, that's not real bass playing. So exactly. So it's like, I'm pretty comfortable playing with a pick and also playing fingerstyle. I obviously in the session here, I was playing both and you guys could see that. So it kind of different tones, different sound. But no, I think Metallica and Megadeth, similar school of thought with regards to heavy metal. Those are some big inspirations for me. The fierceness, the tempo, that kind of mid-range heavy bass tone, especially from Megadeth. I really appreciate that. And a lot of modern bands. I'm into a lot of progressive metal, and so I would say Adam Getgood from Periphery is probably who I would most closely align my bass tone, especially when it's the most gritty, kind of the most overdriven, and it has that twang to it. I'm really going for a kind of modern metal sound. So I would say, yeah, Periphery, some other prog bands out there like Tesseract, just something nuanced, something with some grit to it. I find all of that kind of bass tone inspiring in those bands as well.
I might be a little unique in this project in that I don't really like metal. So it's, but I like heavy music, but growing up, I never really got into like Megadeth or the thrash or any of that. I had a phase in high school where I was into metalcore, more like As They Lay Dying, Parkway Drive kind of stuff. And then probably my senior year of high school, I got out of playing heavy music and I didn't really listen to it at all until this project. And so it's been really fun just reliving Double Kick, a lot of the things. My influences are, my favorite band's the Dave Matthews Band. Tool is another one of my favorite bands. I love Miles Davis. So I think I'm coming from a little different place musically, but I still love the fact that this band can remain heavy, but be melodic, because my influences tend to be quite a bit more melodic and a lot more groove based. But I think it's been really cool with this project, playing heavy technical music, but still maintaining a lot of pocket and a lot of groove and a lot of the same feelings. Hopefully, as a drummer, I try to maintain some of my favorite drummers like Vinny Colaiuta, a guy that can play anything from reggae to really heavy music and make it feel really good and really musical. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Back to me. Like I said, Zeppelin was really the fire starter with me as a guitar player, also as a musician. I'd say that my next significant step was getting into Metallica. They really pushed my lead playing, and just the intensity of the guitar riffs, the longer songs. Master of Puppets, 8.5 minutes, in my opinion, a metal masterpiece, and just what they were doing back then, it really inspired me to get more into the genre. Listening to Guns N' Roses, Iron Maiden, stuff like that. Mostly, I would listen for good riffs, good vocals, good guitar. And that's usually in rock music, like, what you tend to listen to. And a lot of bands I soon realized that I liked had good everybody. Like, they had a good bass player, a good drummer. And so I realized at a later time that I was just attracted to, like, these power trios or power quartets or whatever you want to call them, that everybody had a cool role. There was cool bass, there was cool drums, the guitar was emotive. And I really found that out when I started listening to Muse. That was probably the next major significant increase in my songwriting ability and passion for the instrument and songwriting, because previously I'd been listening to mostly blues-based bands that would throw in some Phrygian, harmonic minor, modal type stuff, but Muse really came from a darker place sonically than most of those bands, and they had a lot of piano in their music, and they just did a lot of stuff that I typically wouldn't listen to. At one point, I was one of the metal rock fans, be like, if you put synthesizer in this, I'm not listening to it, But so they expanded my musical palette and helped me a lot as a songwriter. And these days, coming from a songwriting perspective, I really value the good grooves, the good riffs, intensity, the melodic sense to it. Just all of those kind of shaped who I am as a musician and player and songwriter.
Cool.
I would plug some Maynard James Keenan as well. He's been a huge influence for me. Just like, and I tend to be, I really love screamers, but I can't scream. I've tried. I mean, I can here and there, but so I try to communicate that in different ways. But yeah, love me some Tool, Perfect Circle. Oh yeah, big time.
Me too.
All right.
Yeah. Try to drink you, but you're too far gone. No, take you, that's not what I want. Yeah. It's so curious how we ended up this way. Don't overthink it, that will do you no good. I'm like a freight train coming from a mile away. Then I'm gonna cook you up. It's no fun if you go. You're out the killing line, and I'll go far to go what's No, I won't thank you for all the things that you've said.
other way. Will not try to make it stop. Will not kill, but I am not. Will not try to understand the past as the present stands. Jumping in this paradox. I've come alive when I was not. Now I breathe with all of me. No longer seeking your relief. I am the pain, I am the light. Come alive inside the night. Has left me blind, seeing out through tired eyes. I know I'm fighting at every turn. Don't wanna miss these lessons keep on running, chasing something. It's driving me into the ground. I count the moments one by one, pushing till I come undone. And either they fight you in, or you go inside. And I have seen it a million times, 100 reasons for these crimes. These inner demons that tell us something. Do we run or do we listen? They fall around me and fill my lungs, burning like the rising sun. And either they invite you in, or you come inside. Either you
Well, can you tell me a little about your songwriting process these days? How do they come together?
Sure. For these first couple EPs, we've actually demoed and written most of the songs in the studio. We're about to release our second EP here, or actually, it's about 40 minutes, so I think we can safely call it an album.
I would say so.
Our second album, Ember Skies, here in November. I will demo the guitar tracks, and then we'll record the drums to them, and we kind of build them up from there. It's been working pretty well. I think one of my strengths as a songwriter is just kind of thinking big picture wise, which I think recording all the time and running my own studio, I think gives me a lot of experience to kind of like shape the sonic sound, and I feel like I can usually get to where I'm going when I write the guitar instrumentals. I always have the vocals in mind. I always have like what the bass and drums and everything will do. And so that's helped me on my end of the songwriting, and we've been getting together, everyone individually with me, and we hash out and write the parts. I've had sessions with Josh, Dan, and Brooke, probably 60, 70 of them over the course of this
at
year.
least.
Our sessions are actually, they're recording and songwriting sessions. It's been a little bit easier in this project doing it this way because everything's laid out. There's a map for what the song is. In the past, sometimes when you have a little bit more complex arrangement, it can be hard getting through that 6-7 minute song. But when it's all in the studio, you can kind of perfect everything, feel it out, listen back, fix it, or say, hey, this is great. And I think it's been a refreshing experience. I know I personally really like it because it's helped me a lot creatively.
So every song is built off of the original riff?
I'll write the instrumental, and then if it needs tweaked after some input, like we can change the arrangement or whatever.
So you have something in mind, but do you write the bass parts? And
No, Dan writes the bass parts. We get together and we'll figure it out and get it recorded.
Yeah, and so I can't speak to everyone else's experience, but when Josh and I get together, it's usually after I've gotten an instrumental demo, and it's usually after the drums have been recorded as well. And so I'll take a little bit of time on my own to get in the headspace of writing a part in the specific key of the song and maybe some of the tonal nuances that go along with it. Do I want overdrive? Do I want fuzz? Do I want chorus or something like that? Or do I just want a clean tone? And then going into the studio, then we can kind of make decisions on that and then work out the specific parts and then kind of write it in pieces and then record it as a whole and then play back. And most of the time it sounds pretty cool.
And I guess vocals are kind of one of the last things to be added. It's really nice to have kind of a full instrumental track to work with. Sometimes, Josh will introduce a new song or a riff, and we'll kind of jam it out in practice, and then whatever comes to mind does. But for at least the first EP especially, and I guess the majority of the second, Josh will kind of be like, it's ready. And I get to just kind of go into my own world and see what lyrics or visuals come up around the song and write that way. It's really productive process.
So do you write the lyrics?
I do.
you had mentioned the studio, and I wouldn't mind you expounding upon that. And also, are you guys part of a label? Or any other music organizations, anything along those lines?
Sure. Other than BMI as a songwriter, we're not part of any other organizations. We're an independent band, but I do run Sound West Studios, which I got up and running last fall. I've been doing multiple projects, including Josh's other band, Oslet Wizard. It's been very, very liberating as a musician just to have some freedom. I mean, personally, I can have a cup of coffee and go out to the studio and start writing. So that's helped a lot. I think we all as musicians know sometimes the world's distractions can be our greatest enemy, to our musical progress, both as songwriters and as musicians. But the studio process has been great. I've been fortunate to work with, over the last probably 8-9 months, 20 different artists, all who I'm happy to say that I was part of their process of recording their music. From a Fate's Fortune perspective, it's really helped us. Productive that Brooke used earlier has been a very, very cool thing. Being in other projects where songs can linger and sit around and not get done, and writer's block, and there's so many factors that have gotten in the way. And this year has really been firing on all cylinders for me personally. But I also feel like everybody in this band has put in so much effort and good writing, good recording. I'm very happy with everything.
So, what would you say is the ultimate direction for your band? Are you seeking fame and fortune?
I don't think any of us are motivated by money. It's more of the passion for our instrument and the passion of the music.
Yeah.
And I know, like, we joked around about cliches earlier, and I hate to throw out the cliche. It's just about the passion. But with music, it really is. I mean, it's something you either feel passionately about or you don't. And for us, we're just trying to make as big of a brand and band that we possibly can in the Northwest. And if it goes farther than that, hallelujah. If it ends there, we can happily say, like, we did this, we did some cool music, and we're content in life. So I guess, for just the gist of everybody talking, like, we're going to take it as far as we can. We have realistic expectations. It's tough for independent bands these days.
It is. Yeah. So what advice do you have for people who want to form their own bands?
Just do it.
Just do it?
Just do it and mess up and be vulnerable and never ever give up. If it's in you to do it, then the world needs to hear what you want to say.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I know we converse about kind of broad topics during and after practices a lot of the time, including on this topic, band direction, inspiration, where we want to take our sound next, where we want to play next, things like that. And we kind of talk about what does it mean to make it, quote unquote, as a band. And I think that reasoning probably changes from person to person. At least for me, it's being able to kind of make the music and the performance real, and by that I kind of mean performing it live, where we're able to get feedback and elevate people's moods and get their thoughts on what we're doing. And I really like that reciprocation, and I think it's a good relationship to have with a community. And not to jump on that cliche train, but one of the big motivations for me is being a part of a music community, a broad music community, but then drilling down a couple levels and not necessarily founding, but joining a melodic heavy music community and bringing others with us and playing shows with other bands in the space that not a lot of people might know about. So taking whatever expertise we've garnered over the years and just sharing it with everybody else. I think that's probably the biggest goal that I have for the band.
Our initial plan for our releases, we were going to do 3 EPs, all 5 songs each. We released our first EP a couple months ago, and then we just got in a good songwriting mood. So our next one's going to be 7 songs, about 40 minutes, and then we're planning on either 7, 8, 12 song album here in the spring. Because we've been in such hardcore writing mode pretty much since we started the band, we've actually written a fairly extensive back catalog of songs, and we're trying to just get around 20, 25 done, and then we're just going to hit the cycle of playing them out, try to get on as many festivals as we can next summer, and try to get our music to as many people as possible, and hope for the best from there.
That sounds like a good direction.
I think something that's important to highlight is that the music industry has changed. It's far harder to make a living now. Talking to a lot of old musicians, even in the 80s, you made more. There's research to prove you made more money at the same, like the cost of living was way less. And so I think there's a little bit of a chip on my shoulder as a musician of you work hard, you're an artist, and a lot of venues and places, they don't just, not necessarily that they're trying to underappreciate you, but they're ignorant to how much work and how much heart it takes and how much effort it is to keep a group of people together and on the same page. So I think in doing that, I'm like with this band and other bands, it's exciting to see like as the music industry changes, the need for music and the power of music is not going anywhere. In fact, more than ever, I feel like music has a huge impact on culture and society and how people live their lives. So I think we as musicians are going to have to figure out how to adapt to the industry to be successful, not just successful for the sake of patting our own back, but successful so that we can keep doing it long term. And that's a unique challenge that we've gone through as a band already. But I'm excited to continue to put the work in and to believe in what we are saying musically as a statement enough to just keep going, even when you're packing your gear up and it's late night and there's not that many people there, and sometimes you wonder, what am I doing? But just to to bring it back to the fact that this can change the world, and it has, and it'll continue to do so as long as people continue to invest into it.
Yeah, and I think in that respect, as long as that question, Hiram, what advice could I give to musicians who are kind of just getting started or people who are just putting their bands together? Just absolutely, like what Josh was saying, it's our job as musicians to keep music going, right? And I would say the same thing to people who haven't got started their first band yet, or people who are finding a slump or something like that. From a practical perspective, I'd say put regular practices on the books and stick to them as much as possible. I think that kind of cadence is really what drives success, especially in the early stages of founding your sound. But then I would say, put all your heads together and have a conversation kind of like we've been having here and decide what everybody wants to get out of it. Because I think that'll help kind of measure what people want to put into it, maybe how much time or how much effort or how much variation on what they already know and how much future learning that they can engage in, but also just so that everybody knows what page everybody else is on and what all is possible. So I think everything that we've talked about here is the type of conversation that any band should have kind of when they're getting started, a vision, if you will.
Well, I think the longer you do music, the more specific it gets for you, the more you realize who you are in it and what it means to you. And, kind of, you need to zoom out sometimes too. And these guys mentioned, music has changed our lives, obviously. That's why we're doing it. But it can save people's lives too. It can change a community. It can bring people together. I think it's important to have a vision for yourself individually, and then also, kind of keep checking in as a band. What are we doing this and why? Because it does get hard. It can. We've all done music for a really long time, and it can get exhausting. But then, this project has completely re-energized me and has completely inspired me to, and has allowed me to remember kind of why I want to do this, and to see people's reactions. There's nothing like that. And so I think. For people who are just getting started, who feel that similar fire, you just learn as you go, too. You have to make mistakes. You have to fall. You have to keep going.
Well, following on the last couple of points here, I think networking is very important for anyone that likes music in this community. Like just the fact that the three of you guys here, Matt here, Hiram, and Brad, you guys are taking your Sunday afternoon to basically help us get our music out there and supporting the community. Like, we sincerely appreciate it. And I've been fortunate enough to have been helped by groups like Logjam Presents, Knitting Factory, several promoters over the years that have helped move our career forward. So I'm fortunate that we have a good music community here, and I'm excited to see what lies beyond that. And advice for new bands: you got to make a connection with your fans, whether you have 5 of them or 500 of them. You need to make it a memorable experience. It's not about your ego. It's not about this. It's not about the sound. It's really about making sure the audience has a good time there. I like to say you're a musician in band rehearsal, but you're a performer on stage. It's your job to make sure people have a good time, and your job to come and give a performance that you can be proud of. And I think if everyone can strive towards both like a professional excellence and a networking mentality, I think it would help everybody in this community and help grow everybody.
I agree. I find that this musical community is second to none. I did want to just circle back right quick and to talk about the chip on your shoulder. And I think that as musicians, we have a responsibility to not undervalue our art. And so it's pretty hard when people are agreeing to do things for drinks or a bar tab, and then the powers that be start expecting that. So I would be remiss if I didn't get on my soapbox for just a quick second.
For sure.
To just kind of make that is the power is in our hands, because these promoters, these bar owners, these club owners, they're not the ones making the music.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and it's clear too with downloading. People don't respect the art enough to pay for it, and it's it has killed a lot of the revenue that musicians can generate, not to get rich, but like I said, to continue to invest back into the project. And so I think the more that we kind of reclaim that respect of like, hey, this is art. You know, you wouldn't go see someone painting a beautiful painting and try to take it when they're not looking. And so why do that to musicians?
I think that's great, and I think that's important that we just keep reminding our fans, the community, and the purveyors of our art basically the same thing. So I think that's good.
And it's a multifaceted issue. There's a lot of things going on in corners. I mean, it's more expensive to run a business these days, so they're trying to pay the bands the least amount possible. Bands have started playing for free over the last 20, 30 years. It's really not very cut and dry because there's a lot of issues coming from everywhere, but I think we just need to stay positive about everything. It's really easy to kind of self-wallow in your own pool, like things aren't going your way or you're not getting these shows. But I think if you can be optimistic about your musical future, you can be successful, and only you can define that success at what level it is. And because I like to leave everything on a positive note, especially in these interviews, and just the fact that you guys took your afternoon, spent it with us, helped us out, like we sincerely appreciate it.
Yeah, for real.
Absolutely.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Is there anyone else you'd like to acknowledge for offering financial or emotional, creative support?
My dog.
Your dog?
He's a pug.
Which one, creative or financial?
Oh, all of them. I'd say definitely financial. No, he does not pay my rent. His name is Zeppelin, but
Nice.
yeah, he helps a lot.
Very nice.
No, I would definitely say like not like explicit to this project, but in general, just my parents specifically have given me a lot of financial support over the years through the form of amps, instruments, lessons, things like that, to really help me get to where I am now. And you know, when they don't live in Missoula anymore, but when I get a chance to meet up with them and then show them the music that we're creating, then I get feedback from them, and earnest and honest feedback, and I really appreciate that. Aside from that, you know, I've got a group of close friends and a group of colleagues at work who I exchange my tunes with, and in exchange for their feedback, and I really appreciate that relationship. It's nice reciprocation, and at the same time, a lot of the time they come to me and they're just like, so when do I get to hear the next one? So I appreciate that. So friends, family, colleagues, people who are willing to listen to me nerding out about tones and gear and things like that, like I would say thanks to all of them.
I would say Dave Illich for me. He's a world-class teacher. When I was in LA, he reshaped the entire way I looked at the instrument, and he's still, you know, if I ever email him or send him a message, you know, he gets right on top of it and answers me and gives me like honest. Sometimes it's so honest it hurts, but it's been huge. Just finding like that's something I encourage any young musician to do, is to invest into to a teacher, someone that you can bounce stuff off, but a teacher that's going to be honest with you, and kind of define some musical goals, and then to just invest, you know, the time and money into it. But like Dave Illich is a great guy and a great teacher, and I think that's been huge for me personally.
For me, it would be my parents first and foremost. They put up with a lot of loud guitar playing in my high school years, and they were always supportive at every show. You know, it can't be understated how much my parents, and I'm sure the parents of all of us, have supported. And I mean, we're kind of all in our late 20s, early 30s, so I mean, we're out of the house now, but the fact that they supported us through those pivotal learning years is super important. Marco at Morganroth has always been a big supporter and has helped me out. He's been my guitar tech for years. Checkers and the crew at ESP have been great.
Yeah.
I hate to start name dropping in case I forget everybody, but there's been a lot of people that have helped everyone in the band, me personally, former bands, get going, and at the time when you don't know what you're doing when you're in high school. So just fortunate we're in a great musical community with so many musically motivated and passionate people.
And I would be remiss to mention that my parents still come to all of my shows.
That's great.
Yeah, they're awesome people.
That's great. So everybody listening, you need to check out this band, and they play around Missoula often. I would highly encourage you to check them out. Any last words from you guys?
Well, if you want to check us out more, check us out fatesfortunemusic.com or on facebook.com/fatesfortunemusic or instagram.com/fatesfortuneofficial.
Like
and
it.
you can also hear our full first EP that came out in July on Spotify, Google Play, or Apple Music.
Excellent.
All the things.
All the
yeah,
things.
and we're always happy to meet people at shows too. Like we're so into our quote unquote fans and making those connections. So yeah.
Yeah, if you ever come and see us, as soon as we're done playing, please come up and talk to us.
Yeah, we'll give you a sweaty hug.
Yeah, exactly. We'll talk gear, we'll talk sound,
Yeah.
we'll talk future shows, all that kind of stuff. Just come hang out with us.
And we're recording this in September, but I assume it's coming out around November. So if you're listening to this in November, December, check out our latest album, Fate's Fortune 2, Ember Skies.
Yeah.
Available everywhere.
Any last words, Dirty Chai?
Yeah, just to all the people out there, keep supporting local music. Thank you for the support thus far. I love Missoula. I just think the people here are as beautiful as the city itself, and I'm kind of with Josh. I think I'm super optimistic about not only our future, but just the future of music in general. And again, thank you guys for what you're doing. I think this stuff right here is a part of it. It's a unique thing. I don't know of something like this anywhere else, and I haven't talked to anybody doing something like this, and so I think that in itself shows there is a cool, unique thing going on in Missoula. So I'd say let's just go after it until we can't anymore.
Very nice. Well, thank you all again for being a part of this program and being a part of this musical community. From the agreeable bassist, Brad Craig, engineer Matt Olson, and all of the KGM listeners and staff, please keep it up.
Thank you so
you.
much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
You will every sanity, in every breath we breathe, it still moves with the wind. Won't you tell me again? Ooh, won't you tell me again?
You are listening to
105.5
on your FM dial.